Hello, YouTube. SkepticalRoot. I've I've already shot and finished this video a couple of times, and I keep forgetting stuff. And the different takes I do. The last take, I decided that I didn't feel like editing out me swatting a fly that kept buzzing around my screens here, but doing it again. I didn't like it. So I got my list here, which actually in the subsequent videos, I've added 3 more things to my list. I was down to 3 things. I was down to racism is prejudice plus power. That topic. I was down to privilege. And privilege in this case was referring to its relation to intersectionality. And I don't care about your feelings, which will probably be the last one I do off my original list. But since then, I've also added the usage of gender, which I'm going to talk about, and culture and its relations to race and people, personal identity, and my take on what I would call my take on theism. I'm just going to leave it at that instead of going into detail, because that's the whole video, believe me. And it's not just, oh, I'm an atheist and blah, blah, blah. No, I've got some takes on it, which I'll go into. And some of them are just in my own head. Don't get me wrong. I'm not walking around expressing some of these views. But you'll see what I'm saying when you see the video. So anyway, privilege. What we're going to talk about today. Yay. So those of you who aren't familiar with privilege, it is not to be confused with the Google definition or dictionary definition of privilege, which is a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or a group of people. No, the privilege we're talking about here is the privilege of not. That's probably the best way to describe it. It is not about getting something extra. It is about not having to have something. Which is a very strange use of the term privilege. It's taking the concept of disadvantage and calling its inverse privilege, which it is not necessarily. That is the way that it has come about to be called privilege, though. I think if the term had been used advantage, I think a lot of the talk around privilege would have been better socially. Within intersectionality, and where privilege is used the most is in this is in terms of intersectional feminism. The concept of privilege is of normalcy, if you will. It is the elevated bar by which everyone wishes to be treated or should be treated. It is not the norm. It is not the zero line. It is the monkey bars. And all things below that are below that. If you're not familiar with the concept of intersectionality, and there's this concept in there, and this is in terms of intersectional feminism, because, as I've said in the previous videos, but you didn't get to see them, intersectional feminism is the only place I've seen this concept of intersectionality applied or used. Although the concept of intersectionality is not unique to feminism, it is unique in this way that it is argued. I have only ever heard of intersectionality being used through feminist dialogue, so I'm going to only be addressing it as I've heard it through feminist dialogue. It's not... I can't imagine that's the only place that the concept occurs, but... and when I explain it to you, you'll understand how this kind of goes. So, the basic concept is this thing called the progressive stack, and it is not an actual stack because at the top we have the most privileged people at the top here. They are the white heterosexual male cisgendered able-bodied Christians, using those 6 dimensions. There are probably more dimensions, but if you just say cis white males, that generally includes the first layer of the cake, if you will. Although, really, the cake is kind of inverse, but not necessarily directly. Where that's the largest chunk at the top, because that's where all the privilege lies. Because the concept is that the those that hold power are in that top layer. And from there, you get smaller and smaller and smaller slices of cake, depending on what layer of cake, I should say, how more marginalized you are. A black Muslim transgendered lesbian paraplegic would be at the bottom of the stack. Not many people could be considered lower than that on the level of oppression that they must endure in their life, putting them further and further and further from the zero line. But privilege is an accusation based on stereotypes and assumptions that we are always told to not do to other groups of people, but somehow it's okay to accuse someone of having privilege because of those factors that they can't control, as their cisgenderedness, their heteronormativity, their gender, their racial background, and their ability, and their religious belief. I'm, by the way, one level below that because I'm not a Christian, but I still be considered in the cis white male slice of the pie. But the further down the stack we go, it's often said, and this is a more application of intersectionality, it's often said that we need to listen to the people who are more oppressed, who suffer more institutional harm, if you will, than people who are higher on the stack. So Oprah, as a black woman, would fall lower on the stack than, say, any white male. But if we're talking about understanding the challenges and trials that people go through, if that man, grew up poor in a neighborhood where his race was not the dominant race, or such as in most inner city environments, was poorly educated, had an abusive parent, and came from a single parent household, for example, or something like that, that person would suffer more oppression for all those things that they are not, more than, say, Oprah would, who is a wealthy black woman. They would face more challenges getting work. Let's say they had gone to jail, let's say for drugs or something like that. No violent offense, but still, their ability to progress in the world is even more severely hampered than Oprah's is. But that's where this accusation of privilege, kind of fails, is that Oprah is less oppressed than I am, and the difference here being primarily economics and education. She has enough money to get whatever education she wants, and she can make as much money as she wants. Education being strictly tied back to financial gain. Really, that's the kicker here. It comes back to money, and the utility of money, the utility that money offers you. That's really this going back to ancient times. This concept of class, and it's all based on wealth. You know, if you are a nobody somewhere but you have money, you can go somewhere else and be a somebody. There's no reason you have to be a nobody everywhere. But money offers you that option, and being black doesn't offer you that option. But intersectionality and I don't want to get on this bandwagon of, you know, victimization. People need to recognize how much of a victim they are, in order to, I don't know, be upset about stuff. I read an article not too long ago about a white male who's talking about how he can help people understand. You know, he worked for some nonprofit, and he was at some place, and he was talking to a black woman, and her son. They were there to get food or something like that, to get some kind of food assistance. And after 15 minutes of talking to her, she became very upset at how racist and unfair the world was, when beforehand she did not believe that she was a victim of racism, or that she was being oppressed, or any of this type of stuff. And after speaking with this guy, he was very proud of the fact that he was able to open her eyes to this world around her that was keeping her down. Instead of, looking at the world as it is and not making judgments, she was put in a position where she was given information that would force her to make judgments that may or may not have been accurate. We can't suss out the motives of people unless they tell us. We can assume based on their actions, but we don't know. It goes back to my objective standards for racism. How do you know if somebody's actually racist unless they tell you? If they make a disparaging comment about a particular racial group, let's say they talk about poor black people. There are a lot of poor black people in this world. A lot of them are financially and societally hampered by their lack of money. That keeps them in poor neighborhoods, that keeps them undereducated, that subjects them to violence and things like that. The thing that would change most of that is money. You know, the 90s and 2000s, gangster rappers and whatever, they got famous and they stopped living in areas where they were being shot at all the time. 50 Cent isn't living, in the place where he grew up. He probably moved his family out of there too. Many of them he felt like he liked or wanted to come with them. Because it's not where they wanted to be. They're forced into those situations and they're stuck without money, without assistance, without some way to get out of that. But filling people with the idea that other people have something that over them because they look at themselves as, my life is normal, but there are people that don't live my life. They aren't pulled over for broken taillights, or they aren't, followed through stores everywhere, and all this type of stuff. I mean, when I go into a store and security follows me around, which has happened before in my life, I have never interpreted, a salesperson following me around, for example, even when I was younger, even when I'd go into nicer stores, dressed rather poorly. It never dawned on me that they were following me because they thought I was going to steal something. I always just assumed that they were bored and were supposed to be helping me. Never did it dawn. In hindsight, and having spent a good deal of time working in retail, It was because they were probably told to make sure you help customers. Don't let them think that you're not there, not that you're not available. Some people, somewhere, sometimes may decide to follow a couple of black people through a department store because they are racist and they are afraid they're going to steal something. Frankly, most retail people don't care that much. Even security doesn't care that much. But if it gets them, makes them do their job or makes them feel powerful, maybe they'll be a little more active on it. But usually they're looking for people shoving stuff in their coats. Mostly young kids who think they can get away with it. It has nothing to do with race. At least not. I mean, I grew up in some very white areas that, when black people came into the store, I no more thought that they were going to rob the place than, anybody else that walked into the store. Generally speaking, they were people who you kind of got the feel for over a year or so working in retail. Those that were looking for trouble, you learned to see the signs. And it had nothing to do with their race. It had everything to do with how they were scoping the place out, how often they were there, the types of things they wanted to look at, And that was because crooks are usually dumb. Which is why so many of them get caught. But that's, it didn't have to do with race when I was followed around. It didn't have to do with, race when I didn't follow other people around. And like I said, I grew up in a very, 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 very white area. Not Idaho white. But an example is my high school had an Indian guy and 2 black kids. That was as much. We had a Chinese girl and an Indian girl. So we had an Indian boy, an Indian girl, and then we had 2 black students and a Chinese girl. And I had 215 kids in my graduating class. In a smaller school, yes. But that was it. The black boy that went to our school, I believe he was adopted, or he started off in foster care and then was adopted, or maybe not. I thought there was adoption. Maybe his parents just adopted other kids. I don't remember. But that was it. That's how white of an area I grew up in. And even in that area, I didn't see the racism. I didn't hear the racial slurs. And when we did, it was always like, dude, come on, really? Who were you? I saw it more in the more mixed, schools around where I grew up. But I wasn't exposed to a lot of it. And I never imagined that just because somebody was there and they were black, that was what I had to look out for. We were warned every year in the one company I worked for to watch out for the gypsies. And the police would even come by and say, hey, they're in the area. They're scouting out the mall here. Keep an eye out. Here's what they're going to try to do. Never actually saw them, though. But whatever. That's it. Privilege, it's an accusation like racism or sexism. It's not... I don't see its value. And I also don't see that as a special right, advantage, or immunity. Because if we all want people to be treated indifferently, we all want people to be treated like what we think white, cisgender, heterosexual Christian males are treated, able-bodied Christian males are treated, then that's the zero line. And everything else is shit. So we need to stop doing that stuff. We need to raise everybody up to that zero line. And then we'll see that the only true advantage, the only true privilege you can have is cash in the bank. The magic of money, There was a phrase, I can't think of it, so skip it. I guess that's it. So we'll cross privilege off my list. We'll call this one in the can. Again, still waiting for Microsoft to fix the MJPEG problem with my webcam software. Sorry about the video quality of this video and the previous one. I'm trying to get the settings right on this. It's not perfect. There was some more cool stuff I could do, changing the gain and saturation and stuff like that I don't have in the Windows default player. But what broke was, I guess they changed how MJPEG streams were handled, the H.264 or direct show formats. What they basically do now in the anniversary update, Windows 10 anniversary update, is they virtualize the camera interface, so different applications can access the camera at the same time, but through their virtual interface. But that broke MJPEG rendering because I guess Microsoft thought nobody used it anymore, and there are several forums that are open on Microsoft. People screaming their heads off because they built software around MJPEG and direct show, directly accessing USB 2 webcams at up to 1080p, and it's just none of it works now. The support's still there, but the DLLs are missing or something like that, and there's no way to put them back and have Windows recognize them directly. So I've got the Windows driver installed and using the camera app. I'm looking for something else too, but some of the other programs that I've used do not give me any more functionality than this does, and this is just fine. This is a little flaky. Like for some reason I can't get it to save the infinity focus or turning down the white balance just a little bit. And every time I click off of it, it wants to go back to normal. So I have to kind of leave those controls open when I'm recording this, and it drives me nuts. So anyway, thanks for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Do it. Do it. Do it. Like this video. Comment below. Share it with other people. Using your social media, if you'd like, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Can you share YouTube videos on Instagram? I have an account in my IRL, but I don't use it. I basically just follow other people that I know from Facebook, who I went to high school with or something like that, or maybe some family or something. But anyway, Twitter, Facebook, got a blog. You can go read my blog. Links in the description. And I'm putting together a web page that right now basically is just a Google Pages page that links to the same stuff in the description of this video. But it's an alpha. I'm probably going to... I might try to figure out WordPress. Who knows? Throw it up on WordPress. But who has time for that? Anyway, that's it. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye and hello, as always.
If it doesn't...